If this is your first time buying into a 55 plus community, here's what nobody tells you up front. They're not all the same. Most buyers come into this assuming one 55 plus community is basically like the next. Same rules, same fees, same lifestyle. It's not true. And not knowing can cost you money, or worse, land you in a community that's just not the right fit. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what actually makes these communities different, the mistakes I see happen on both the buyer side and the seller side, and then I'm going to break down the three specific communities right here in Lakewood Ranch, Webb Catalina, and Cresswind, so you can see just how different the same kind of community can actually be. Quick thing before we dive in. If you're actively looking to buy or sell in a 55 plus community here in Lakewood Ranch, drop a comment and let me know which community you're looking at, or reach out directly using the link below. And if this is the kind of thing that's useful, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'll answer specific questions as we go. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the buyers, because this is where I see the most confusion and honestly the most risk. Most people looking at a 55 plus community for the first time are focused on the house, square footage, layout, maybe the kitchen, pool or no pool. It's a wish list to start, and it's totally understandable. But the house is actually the easy part. What trips people up is everything around the house, and a lot of the buyers don't even know to ask about it. First, occupancy rules. There's a federal law called Housing for Older Persons Act, HOPA for short, that requires at least 80% of the occupied units in a 55 plus community to have at least one resident who's 55 or older. That doesn't mean every single person living there has to be 55 plus. Some communities allow a limited number of younger residents as long as the 80% threshold holds. And there's a detail specific to this area. Webb communities don't actually follow that 80-20 standard rule. They allow up to 10% of the owners to be under 55, but those owners have to be at least 45. That's the kind of detail that varies by community, and if no one tells you that up front, you might assume the rules that don't actually apply to the home you're looking at. Second, and this is a big one, grandkids visiting. I get asked about this constantly. Visitors are almost always fine. HOPA is about permanent residency, not who comes to visit for the holidays. But a lot of communities layer their own guest policies on top of that, like a cap on how many consecutive days a guest can stay, or the total number of guest stays per year. So can my grandkids visit and can my grandkids live with me are two different questions with two very different answers, and the specifics depend on the community. Third, HOA fees. This is where I see buyers get genuinely surprised. HOA fees commonly cover things like landscaping, exterior maintenance, amenity access, pools, fitness centers, clubhouses, and sometimes cable or internet, though that's not universal. Trash and recycling is common too, but not guaranteed. Some communities bill that separately through the county or a private hauler. What's typically not included is your interior maintenance, personal utilities, homeowners insurance, and property taxes. And then there's the one no one asks about until it's too late, the CDD. That's the Community Development District Assessment, a separate annual fee collected through your property tax bill. That funds infrastructure like roads, stormwater systems, and shared amenities. It's not optional, and it's not the same as your HOA fee. In this area, the CDD assessments typically run somewhere between $1,500 and $3,500 a year, depending on the community. If an agent only quotes you with the HOA number, you're not getting the full cost picture. Fourth, and I get this question constantly from people buying a second home. If I'm not living here full time yet, can I rent it out? The answer is it depends entirely on the individual's community rules. And in this case, what you really need to check out before you buy, not after. Minimum lease terms vary by community. Some allow shorter seasonal rentals with a 30-day minimum, while others require much longer lease terms. Many communities also cap the number of percentages of homes that can be rented out at any given time, and some have a waiting period before a new owner is even allowed to lease their home. On top of that, any tenant you place is still generally has to meet the same age requirements as the owner would. You can't rent to a family that doesn't fit the community's age restrictions just because you're the owner, not the resident. And if you're thinking short-term or seasonal rental specifically, That can trigger additional requirements, state license, tourist tax, that kind of thing. None of this is a deal breaker, but it's actually the kind of thing you want mapped out before you close and not after. Here's the reframe I actually want to talk to you about. You shouldn't have to know to ask about any of this. A good agent has these answers ready even before you start touring homes, not after you've already fallen in love with the house or the community. Let's flip to the seller side because the same knowledge gap shows up here too, just in a different way. When an agent treats a 55 plus listing exactly like another piece of real estate, a few things tend to go wrong. First, the marketing is generic. Standard listing photos, standard descriptions focused on square footage and bedroom count, when the buyer for this home is actually motivated by lifestyle, low maintenance living, community amenities, accessibility. If your marketing doesn't speak to that, you're not reaching the buyer who actually wants this house. And second, pricing. Using general neighborhood comps instead of comps specific to that community can lead to underpricing a well-maintained, amenity-rich home or overpricing one that doesn't measure up to what's nearby. Either way, it's a problem. And the natural result of both of those mistakes, homes sit on the market longer than they should, and it's usually not one big mistake, it's a handful of small ones that add up to lost time and often lost money for the seller. Here's something I see firsthand, and it's honestly one of the clearest signs of this gap. Agents bring buyers to my listings and ask me questions they should already know the answers to. Occupancy rules, what's covered in the HOA, guest policies, things a buyer's agent should have already walked their client through before the showing. And a lot of time it's because the agent bought a buyer lead online and never actually worked this market. They're representing a buyer in a community they don't know well themselves. And that's not a knock on them personally, it's just what happens when someone's representing a buyer in a market they haven't actually worked before. And here's where I want to really prove this point, because it's the part people underestimate the most. Let's look at the three communities right here: Lakewood Ranch, Webb, and Catalina, and Cresswind. On paper, they may all lump together as a 55 plus option in the area. In practice, they're pretty different products. Before I get into what's different, here's what they actually all have in common. All three are gated, and all three have a full-time lifestyle or amenities director on staff, someone whose whole job is programming events, clubs, and activities for residents, so that baseline is consistent no matter which one of these you're looking at. Where they really start to separate is everything beyond that point. Webb Lakewood Ranch is the original, the established community. It's all resale inventory at this point, with a large clubhouse, mature landscaping, walking trails, and an on-site restaurant, which honestly is a real differentiator. Not many communities in this area offer on-site dining within the gates. And one thing worth knowing is that if you're touring here, parts of the community sit close to State Road 70. So if you're sensitive to road noise, lot location matters. Webb Catalina is the newer sister community. Same brand, different experience. It's more amenity dense, a resort-style 15-acre campus, a large pickleball setup with covered courts, a wellness center, its own restaurant. Here's the detail that really matters, though. HOA fees are set artificially low during the construction phase. Once the amenity is fully built out and handed over to the residents, expect those fees to increase. And there's typically a separate food and beverage fee tied to the restaurant on top of that. If you look only at today's HOA number without that context, you can be caught off guard later. Cresswind is the smallest and most boutique of the three. It's got a more intimate feel, and this surprises people, a strong amenities to resident ratio, meaning per person there's actually quite a lot to offer despite its smaller size. Most available homes right now are resale rather than new construction, which matters depending on whether you want to customize a new build or move into something already established. And here's the piece that goes beyond the spreadsheet. Each of these communities has its own culture, and you can actually see it in what they offer. The Webb Lakewood Ranch is built around its restaurant and packed clubhouse calendar, billiards, arts and crafts, a full lineup of classes and clubs, plus a heated pool with a separate lap lane. Webb Catalina leans hard toward wellness, an active lifestyle, golf simulator, resistance pool, a dozen pickleball courts, more of them covered than you'll find almost anywhere else in the area. And Cresswind has its own branded lifestyle program built around fitness, relationships, education, and entertainment with things like dedicated fitness studio, arts and crafts room, bocce, and an event lawn for concerts and community gatherings. None of this shows up on the fee comparison chart. And if someone wants to play competitive pickleball every day, Catalina's setup might matter more to you than the restaurant at the original Del Webb. If you want to acquire a more intimate social scene, Cresswind's smaller size might be exactly what you're after. Most buyers come into this area assuming all 55 plus communities feel the same day to day. They don't, and the right fit matters just as much as the right numbers. And one more thing worth pointing out, all three of these communities get to lean on something bigger than themselves. Lakewood Ranch has been ranked as #1 or #2 top-selling master plan community in the entire country for 8 years running. That's not a marketing line, that's independent industry data. It comes with real dining and shopping options at Waterside Place and at Main Street, genuine entertainment and cultural options, top-rated schools, and it's just a short drive from some of the best beaches on the Gulf Coast. Not every 55-plus community in Florida can say that. So when you're comparing these three, you're not just comparing the community itself, you're comparing what it's plugged into. So what does this all add up to? It's not about being a better agent in some general sense. It's about knowing a specific market well enough to get ahead of the questions before they turn into problems. For sellers, that means marketing and pricing a listing around what this buyer actually values, not a generic approach. And for buyers, that means walking through occupancy rules, HOA inclusions, and community-specific details before you ever step foot in a showing, not after you've already fallen in love with the house. And that's exactly the kind of detail I focus on, whether you're selling a home in a 55-plus community or looking to buy into one here in Lakewood Ranch. If you think this was helpful, hit subscribe. I'm going to keep covering the details other agents skip over so you don't have to find them out the hard way. And if you're thinking about buying or selling in a 55 community here in Lakewood Ranch or otherwise, drop a comment with your question or reach out directly using this link below. I'm George Latos, Zackos Realty.